The night sky was no longer dark. It was glowing red, not with sunset but with fire. Explosions painted the clouds as if the heavens themselves were burning. Every second another shockwave rolled across the ruined city, shaking the ground like thunder that never ended. Human engineer Eli Grant ran through the smoke with his helmet light flickering, trying to keep his balance on broken concrete. His ears rang from the nearby blast, but he kept going. The radio in his helmet buzzed with static and panicked voices. "All rescue teams, fall back! Repeat, fall back! The city is lost." But Eli didn't stop. He was part of the Human Rescue Division, a team that had come to help evacuate alien civilians after weeks of fighting. The war had gone too far. Both sides had bombed each other's cities until there was nothing left but ash. This was supposed to be a peace mission, but now the peace was dead. Eli turned a corner and saw the wreckage of a transport ship in flames. The smell of burning metal and fuel filled the air. His boots splashed through puddles of blood and oil mixed together. He felt sick, but there was no time for fear. Somewhere in this destroyed city were survivors, maybe even children. He scanned the ruins with his visor. The scanner beeped faintly. Life detected, weak signal 20 meters ahead. "Hang on," Eli whispered. He pushed through smoke and fire until he reached what used to be a school building. The roof had collapsed. Desks and strange alien toys lay scattered on the ground. And under a beam of twisted metal, he saw her, a small alien girl. Her skin was pale blue and she had soft silver eyes half open in pain. She was covered in dust and blood, clutching a piece of cloth, maybe from her family. Her breathing was slow. Eli dropped his weapon and ran to her. He tried lifting the beam, but it was too heavy. He pulled out a servo wrench from his suit's tool belt and used it to pry the metal upward. His arms trembled. The wrench slipped twice. His heart pounded louder than the bombs. Finally, the beam gave way just enough for him to pull her out. She was light, fragile, like a doll. He checked her pulse, weak but alive. "Hey, it's okay," he said softly, though she couldn't understand his language. "I've got you." He wrapped her in his emergency blanket and tapped his radio. "This is Grant, Sector 7. I found a survivor, a child. Requesting evac, static, no reply." He tried again, louder this time. "Command, do you copy?" "I have a civilian child. Need extraction." Then a faint voice came through. His commander, Colonel Reeves. "Grant, get out of there. Evac zone's gone." "You can't save everyone." Eli looked down at the girl. Her eyes opened slightly, staring right at him. "I'm not leaving her," he said quietly. "That's an order, Grant. Bombing wave is coming in less than 5 minutes. You'll die down there." "I'll take my chances." He turned off his radio. Carrying the girl, Eli stumbled through the burning streets. The air was hot enough to melt plastic. Drones flew overhead, dropping new payloads on what was left of the city. The sky roared. Every explosion made the ground shake beneath his boots. He spotted a broken sign written in alien letters. He couldn't read it, but the symbol for shelter was universal. He followed it through the rubble to a half-collapsed tunnel. Inside was darkness, dust, and silence. Eli laid the girl gently on the ground and checked her wounds. A piece of glass was stuck in her arm. He removed it and wrapped the cut with a bandage. Her breathing steadied a little. He looked around. The tunnel had once been a subway station, now filled with broken rails and old machinery. It might hold for a while, maybe long enough to survive the bombing. Above him, the world kept ending. The explosions were closer now. The walls trembled. Tiny rocks fell from the ceiling. The alien girl flinched and began to cry, a soft, strange sound like wind through a flute. Eli knelt beside her and held her hand. "Shh, it's okay. We're safe here. Just a little longer." She looked at him with wide silver eyes, trying to understand his face. Then she pointed up at the shaking roof and whispered something. One word. He didn't understand it, but the tone was clear. It meant home. Eli smiled sadly. "Isa will get you home." Then another explosion hit, this one so strong that it blew the tunnel door open behind them. Eli shielded the child with his body. Shards of metal scraped across his armor. Dust filled the air. The radio crackled again. "Eli, are you still there?" "Grant, answer me." But he didn't answer. He just held the child tighter, listening as the bombs rained above like endless thunder. When the light faded and only the sound of fire remained, Eli whispered, "I'm not letting go." No matter what. Outside, the city continued to burn. But inside the small shelter, one human still refused to surrender. Smoke still floated through the cracks in the tunnel roof, glowing red from the fires above. Every few seconds, dust rained down and the air tasted like metal and ash. Eli Grant sat on the cold floor, his arm wrapped protectively around the alien girl. His breathing was heavy. He had survived the bombing wave and somehow, but the silence that followed felt worse than the explosions. For the first time since the chaos began, there was no sound of drones, no shouting on the radio, no command voices telling him what to do. Just silence, the kind that made a person feel truly alone. The alien girl stirred in his arms, whispering softly in her language. He couldn't understand her words, but her tone was weak and frightened. She pointed at her chest, then her stomach, hungry, maybe in pain. Eli reached into his supply pack and found a ration bar. He broke it in half and offered it to her. She sniffed it first, unsure, then took a small bite. Her silver eyes blinked in surprise at the taste. See? Not poison, Eli said, smiling faintly. Terrible taste, but it keeps you alive. She didn't understand his words, but she smiled back. A tiny, tired smile that gave him strength he didn't know he still had. He looked around the shelter. It was deeper than he thought. A long tunnel, half collapsed, filled with rusted pipes and old subway tracks. The emergency lights flickered faintly on the far wall. A broken maintenance drone lay in pieces near the corner. He dragged it closer, hoping to scavenge parts to recharge his communicator. Maybe he could fix it. Maybe someone was still listening. He removed the panel, connected the wires, and managed to power his radio for a few seconds. Static filled his ears. Then faintly, Sector 7 completely destroyed. No human survivors confirmed. Eli froze. That was his sector. His team. He switched frequencies, desperate. Command, this is Grant. Repeat, this is Eli Grant from Rescue Unit 9. I have a survivor. Request pickup. No response. The signal died again. He slammed the radio on the ground, frustration boiling inside him. The little girl flinched at the noise, and immediately he felt guilty. He took a deep breath and softened his voice. Sorry, I'm just trying to get us out of here. She looked at him, curious, and touched his broken communicator. Then she placed her hand over his heart, a gesture simple but full of trust. Eli didn't know why, but it made him feel something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. He checked his arm computer. The air above was still toxic from the bombing, but the readings showed it would clear in about 2 hours. They couldn't stay here forever. The tunnel wouldn't hold if another wave came. He stood up and explored deeper into the passage. The girl followed quietly, clutching his sleeve. They walked through shadows, passing twisted rails and shattered signs and alien symbols. Some tunnels were blocked by debris, others led into the darkness. As they moved, Eli noticed strange drawings on the wall. Handprints, small and glowing faintly blue. Children's marks. This must have been a shelter before the bombing. He felt a chill. How many didn't make it out? Suddenly, a loud clang echoed through the tunnel. Eli stopped instantly, motioning the girl to stay quiet. He raised his sidearm, scanning the dark corner. The sound came again, metal hitting metal. Then footsteps. Someone was down there. He turned off his helmet light and crouched low, pulling the girl behind him. A shadow moved near the end of the tunnel, tall, armored, with a faint green glow from its chest plate. It wasn't human, an alien soldier. Eli's heart pounded. He knew what they did to humans left behind. Slowly, he aimed his weapon, but his finger hesitated on the trigger. If he fired, he'd give away their position, and if he didn't, they might be discovered. The alien soldier raised its weapon, scanning the tunnel. Then its light fell on Eli and the child. The alien froze. They stared at each other across the smoke-filled darkness, human and alien, both exhausted, both scarred by the same war. The girl gasped and called out a word Eli couldn't understand. Her voice soft but filled with recognition. The soldier looked down at her, then back at Eli. The gun lowered slowly. "Child," the alien said in a broken English accent. "You protect her?" Eli didn't lower his own weapon. "She would have died if I hadn't." The soldier's expression changed, a flicker of confusion, maybe respect. After a tense moment, he placed his gun on the ground and raised both hands. "I help," he said simply. "You save her." "I help." Eli didn't trust him, not yet. But the way the soldier looked at the girl, it wasn't hatred. It was something else. Outside, thunder rolled again. The next bombing wave was coming. Eli stared at the alien soldier and said, "If you're serious about helping, then we move now." Together. The soldier nodded once. Together. And so, in the ruins of a dying city under a sky still burning, two enemies made a silent pact to save one small life in a world that had forgotten mercy. The flickering tunnel lights cast long shadows across the cracked walls. Eli's arm ached from carrying the girl, but he didn't dare put her down. The alien soldier stood a few feet away, tall and scarred, his green armor covered in dust and blood. The alien's breathing was slow, heavy, not the kind of sound that came from an enemy charging into battle, but from someone who had seen too much death. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The only sound was the distant rumble of bombs echoing from above. The alien raised his four-fingered hand slowly and said in broken English, "My name, Rayan, no fight you." Eli didn't lower his gun. "You expect me to believe that?" Rayan looked down at the girl, her silver eyes blinking weakly. "Child, my people, you save her. Why?" Eli's throat tightened. "Because she needed saving. That's what we do." Rayan studied him for a moment, then nodded once. "Then we same." The words hit Eli harder than he expected. He looked at Rayan again. The alien's armor was cracked open at the shoulder, leaking faint green fluid, his blood maybe. Whatever side Rayan was on, he didn't look like a soldier ready to kill anymore. He looked like someone barely holding on. Eli finally lowered his gun, though he kept it close. "Fine, you want to help? Then help me get her out of this city alive." Rayan tilted his head slightly. "You cannot go north. Human army bomb there. You go west. Old bridge," Eli frowned. "That bridge was destroyed last week." "Not all," Rayan said. "Under bridge. Small path. My people use it." Eli didn't trust him completely, but right now there was no other choice. "You lead. I follow." The alien nodded, picking up his weapon again, but this time he carried it low, not aimed. Together they started down the tunnel, the girl cradled in Eli's arms. The floor was slippery with water dripping from the ceiling, and the air smelled of chemicals and smoke. As they walked, Eli kept glancing at Rayan. The alien moved slowly, his body stiff from injuries. It was strange. Two soldiers from opposite sides now walking together through a dying city. At one point, Eli asked quietly, "How old is she?" "The girl." Rayan looked at the child. 5 seasons, he said softly. "Her name?" "Lyra, Lyra," Eli repeated. The name sounded gentle, like wind in the trees. "She said something earlier," pointed to the sky and said a word. "Maybe she was calling for home." Rayan nodded sadly. "Her family gone. Many families gone." They kept walking until the tunnel opened into a wider underground chamber, part of the old subway system. The walls were lined with ancient machines, and the dim emergency lights cast strange colors on the metal. Then Rayan stopped suddenly, raising a hand. "Listen," Eli froze. He heard it too. Faint mechanical clicks echoing through the corridor. "Drones. Search units." Rayan whispered, "They kill both. Yours and mine." The two crouched behind a large metal pipe as a group of drones floated past, scanning the area with red lights. Eli held his breath, pressing Lyra close to his chest. The sound of the drone's engines hummed in the darkness. One of the drones turned sharply, its scanner sweeping across their hiding spot. Rayan quickly pulled out a small EMP grenade, his hand shaking. Eli mouthed, "No noise," but it was too late. The drone's sensors blinked red, locking onto them. Rayan threw the grenade. It exploded in a burst of blue light, knocking all the drones out of the air. Sparks rained down like fireworks. The explosion was small, but the echo was massive, and the roof above them trembled. Chunks of debris fell as the structure groaned. "Move," Eli shouted. They ran, dodging falling rocks and smoke. Rayan grabbed Lyra's blanket as Eli carried her. The tunnel behind them collapsed completely. When they finally reached the end, they burst out into the open night. The city looked worse than before, a graveyard of fire and steel. Towers leaned half-destroyed, glowing from within like dying candles. The air was full of dust, and the sky above was a mixture of red and black. Rayan pointed ahead. "Bridge. That way." Eli nodded, but before they could move, he stopped and said, "Why are you helping me, really? You could have left me to die down there." Rayan turned to him, his face unreadable under the cracked helmet. "Because once, humans saved me too." Eli stared at him in surprise. "When?" Rayan looked up at the burning sky. "Long ago. Before war." Human doctor, she healed my wound, said life is life. I did not understand then. Now I do. For a moment, the two just stood there in silence. The wind howled between the ruins, carrying the smell of smoke and loss. Eli adjusted his grip on Lyra and said quietly, "Then let's finish what she started." They began moving toward the western bridge, their footsteps echoing across the cracked road. Behind them, the city kept burning. But somewhere ahead, beyond the fire and the ash, there was still a chance for something different. Not victory, not revenge, but survival. And maybe, just maybe, understanding. The night air burned like acid. Every breath Eli took tasted of smoke and metal dust. The city behind him was nothing but a field of red embers now, glowing like the heart of a dying star. He could still hear the distant echoes of falling bombs, each one shaking the cracked streets, but he kept moving, because stopping meant death. Beside him, Rayan limped, his armor dented and leaking faint green fluid from his side. The alien girl, Lyra, was asleep in Eli's arms, her small face pressed against his chest. Every few steps she let out a weak breath and Eli held her tighter, afraid that if he loosened his grip she'd slip away like everything else he had lost. Rain pointed ahead with a trembling hand. "Bridge in there." Eli followed his gaze. The Western Skyway Bridge, once a proud silver structure connecting the city to the evacuation valley, now looked like a skeleton of twisted beams. Fire danced across its broken surface and part of it hung over a deep river of molten debris. Eli's heart sank. "That's your safe route?" Rayan nodded slowly. "Underneath." Service path still strong. "We cross fast, fast!" Eli almost laughed. Rain was bleeding. Eli's left arm was half numb from bruises and Lyra was barely conscious. But there was no other choice. The scanners on Eli's wrist showed radiation, spikes behind them. The next bombing wave was approaching. They ran toward the bridge as the first sirens began to scream again in the distance. The metal surface groaned under their weight. Each step echoed like a warning. Smoke rose from cracks and fires licked the railings. The air shimmered from the heat. Below them the river boiled, a mix of oil, chemicals, and ash. Halfway across, Rain stopped and looked up. "Bombers coming!" Eli squinted at the sky. Between the clouds he saw the shapes of massive black ships circling above, silent, cold, mechanical. The kind of machines that didn't care who they killed. "Go!" Rayan shouted. "Run!" Eli sprinted forward with Lyra in his arms. The ground shook as the first missile hit the far side of the bridge. A wave of fire exploded upward, throwing him off balance. He fell hard, rolling across the metal grating. Pain shot through his arm. The impact tore open his sleeve. Blood dripped down his elbow. He forced himself up, gasping, his vision blurry. The prosthetic joint in his exosuit had cracked from the fall. Rain grabbed his shoulder, helping him stand. "Move, not far." They stumbled forward together, but another explosion ripped through the center beam of the bridge. The metal screamed as it began to split apart. Eli saw a section of the bridge collapse into the burning river below. Flames roared upward. The air itself seemed to scream. He could feel the heat burning through his armor. He turned his body to shield Lyra from the blast, but a piece of flying metal slammed into his left arm. The pain was blinding. He fell to his knees, his vision turning white for a second. When he looked down, the arm was crushed, hanging by torn fabric and sparks. Rayan shouted something, but Eli couldn't hear. All he knew was the girl was still in his arms, trembling but alive. He gritted his teeth, forced himself to his feet, and kept walking. One arm gone, the other clutching her tight. Rayan tried to take Lyra, but Eli shook his head. "No, I've got her." Rain hesitated, then nodded. Together they pushed through the firestorm, the sound of destruction following them like a monster's roar. Another missile hit near the middle of the bridge. The shockwave threw Rain sideways. Eli turned just in time to see him tumble toward the edge. "Rain." The alien soldier's hand caught a broken railing, his body dangling above the burning river. Sparks rained around him as he struggled to climb. Eli ran forward, reaching with his remaining arm. Their hands touched, human skin against alien claws. For 1 second, Eli thought he could pull him up. But then the bridge gave another groan and Rain's grip slipped. He fell. "Rain," Eli shouted again, his voice breaking. The sound of the explosion drowned everything. Eli stood there, shaking, unable to breathe. Lyra woke and began crying softly, calling out words he couldn't understand. He looked down through the smoke, but there was nothing, just fire. He wanted to stop, to fall to his knees and give up. But he remembered Rayan's last look. Not fear, not anger, but trust. Not now, Eli whispered, forcing himself forward. Not after everything. He limped across the last stretch of the bridge as the sky behind him lit up with more bombs. The final missile hit the far side, sending a wall of fire racing toward him. He jumped through the smoke just as the structure began to collapse behind him. When he rolled onto the ground on the other side, the bridge was gone, swallowed by flames and water. Eli lay there for a long moment, holding Lyra close. His body shook from exhaustion and pain. His arm was gone, his suit broken, but she was alive. He looked back at the burning sky and whispered, "I didn't drop her, Rain, I didn't." And somewhere deep in the ruined city, the last pieces of the bridge fell into the fire, a grave for those who fought, and a symbol for the one who refused to let go. The sound of beeping machines filled the air, soft, steady, mechanical. It was the sound of life returning, one heartbeat at a time. Eli Grant opened his eyes slowly, his vision blurry under the bright white lights above him. The ceiling wasn't cracked concrete anymore. It was clean metal, safe. For a moment he thought he was dead. Then the sharp pain hit him, the kind that reminded a person they were still alive. He tried to move his left arm and felt nothing. He turned his head. The arm was gone. Only bandages, wires, and an empty sleeve remained. Eli lay still, staring at the space where his arm should have been. He didn't feel anger, not yet. Just silence. He had lost pieces of himself before in this war. But this one felt different, because this time he hadn't lost it for a mission or a command. He had lost it for a child. One small alien girl who had needed him. A soft sound broke the quiet. A child's voice. Eli turned his head. Beside his bed on a smaller cot, Lyra lay sleeping peacefully. Her blue skin was cleaner now, covered with small bandages. She looked like she belonged to a different world. Fragile, innocent, untouched by hate. For the first time since the bombing, Eli smiled. "She made it," he whispered. A voice came from the corner. "She did. And so did you, though barely." Eli turned to see Captain Reese, the medical officer of the human rescue fleet. She was a tall woman with sharp eyes and a tired face. "You've been out for 2 days," she said, walking closer. "We pulled you from the river half dead. The prosthetic medics will give you a new arm soon." Eli nodded slowly. "Rayan?" Her expression darkened. "We didn't find him." Eli looked down, jaw tightening. He'd known it in his heart, but hearing it aloud made it real. Rayan, the alien who had fought beside him when was gone. Captain Reese studied him quietly. "You disobeyed a direct evacuation order, Grant. You went back for her. You almost died." "I did what was right," Eli said softly. "I couldn't leave her there." Reese crossed her arms. "You broke protocol." "Then protocol's broken," he replied, meeting her eyes. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Reese sighed. "You know what's strange? The alien fleet intercepted the same drone footage our recon team did. They saw everything. You carrying that girl through fire, refusing to drop her. They called it an act of honor." Eli frowned. "They saw that?" She nodded. "It's spreading fast. Both sides are calling for a ceasefire to recover survivors. For the first time in years, there's silence on the front lines." Eli couldn't believe it. His one desperate act, one human saving one alien, had stopped the guns if only for a moment. Reese stepped closer and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You lost your arm, Eli, but you might have saved millions." He looked down again at his missing limb. The pain was sharp, but there was a strange warmth beneath it. A quiet pride. "Then it was worth it," he said. Later that night, Eli sat by Lyra's bedside watching her sleep. The medical bay was quiet except for the soft hum of the engines. Outside the window, stars drifted past, peaceful and cold. Eli reached for her small hand with his remaining one. Her tiny fingers wrapped around his thumb, and for the first time in years, he felt something he thought he'd lost forever. Purpose. "Rain didn't die for nothing," he whispered. "Neither did all the others. I'll make sure of that." When he looked at his reflection in the glass, he saw the bandages, the scars, the loss. But he also saw strength. A different kind of strength. He made a silent promise, an oath, to protect what that night had given him. Not just Lyra, but the fragile peace born from his choice. The next morning, the prosthetic team fitted him with a temporary mechanical arm. It wasn't pretty, just a dull piece of metal and wires. But when it moved at his command, Eli felt like he could breathe again. As he left the medbay, he noticed something on the wall screen, a broadcast from both sides. Humans and aliens standing together for the first time, evacuating survivors, delivering supplies and burying their dead side by side. The image looked unreal, almost like a dream. Then Eli saw himself on the footage, carrying Lyra through fire. The caption below read, "The human who refused to let go." He stood there for a long time, speechless. When he returned to the room, Lyra was awake. She looked at his new arm, eyes wide with curiosity. She reached out and touched the metal gently. "It's okay," Eli said with a smile. "Still me." Lyra tilted her head, then said her first clear word in human speech. "Protector." The word hit him like sunlight through smoke. He laughed softly, a sound that felt strange after so much pain. "Protector, huh? I can live with that." Outside, the stars burned brighter. The war wasn't over yet, but something had changed. Something no weapon could destroy. One man had lost an arm. One child had lost her world. But together they had given two civilizations a reason to stop killing. And Eli Grant, the man who refused to drop her, made a vow that echoed silently through the stars. "As long as I live, no child, human or alien, will ever be left behind again." The ship's engines hummed quietly in the distance, but Eli Grant couldn't sleep. The stars outside the viewport looked calm, too calm for a man whose memories were still full of smoke and fire. It had been 3 weeks since the bridge collapse, 3 weeks since he'd woken up without an arm and with the weight of an entire war's silence pressing on his shoulders. But silence wasn't peace. It was just the space between storms. Eli sat in the observation deck, his new prosthetic arm glinting under the soft light. It wasn't like his old one, heavier, slower, and still strange to move. But it worked. That was enough. Lyra walked up beside him, her small feet barely making a sound on the metal floor. She had healed faster than anyone expected. Her blue skin glowed faintly again, and she wore a simple white dress provided by the medical crew. "Can't sleep either, huh?" Eli asked softly. Lyra shook her head. "Nightmares," she said, her voice quiet but clearer now. He smiled gently. "Yeah, I get those too," she tilted her head. "Bridge fire?" He nodded. "Yeah, the bridge. And someone I couldn't save." Lyra looked down sadly, then took his mechanical hand in both of hers. "We go back?" she asked suddenly. Eli blinked. "Back to the city?" She nodded. "Find him, Rayan." Eli froze. The name hit like a whisper from the past. He hadn't spoken it out loud since that night. Everyone assumed Rain was dead, buried under the rubble. But a part of Eli never stopped wondering. The alien had risked everything to help him. He deserved more than to be left forgotten. Eli looked at Lyra, then out at the stars. "You really want to go back there?" "Yes," she said firmly. "You saved me." "We save him," he chuckled softly. For a child who barely spoke his language, she sure understood his heart. The next morning, Eli stood in front of Captain Reese. "You want to go back to the ruins?" She repeated, disbelief in her voice. "Eli, that place is uninhabitable. Radiation pockets, structural collapse. It's a graveyard." "I know," Eli said. "But if there's even a small chance Rain survived, I have to try." Reese crossed her arms. "You're talking about walking into the most dangerous zone left on the planet. For one alien soldier." "Not just a soldier," Eli said quietly. "A friend." Reese stared at him for a long moment. Then she sighed and slid a data tablet across the desk. "You'll need clearance codes and a hazard suit. I'll pretend I didn't hear the rest." He smiled faintly. "Thanks, Captain." "Don't thank me yet," she said. "If the scanners go silent, I'm pulling you out whether you like it or not." The ruins were worse than Eli remembered. His small dropship hovered over what used to be the western edge of the city. From above, it looked like the skeleton of a giant beast. Bones of concrete and steel jutting from the earth, smoke still rising from deep cracks. He and Lyra descended into the broken streets wearing environmental gear. The smell of burned ozone filled the air. The once living city was now silent, haunted by the wind. "This way," Eli said, checking the old map projection. "The bridge site should be 2 clicks east." Lyra followed close, clutching her small pack. The deeper they went, the thicker the dust became. Old posters, signs, and half-melted vehicles lay scattered everywhere. When they reached the base of what was once the bridge, Eli's chest tightened. The metal structure lay in pieces, half buried in rubble. The river below had turned into black sludge. He walked slowly across the cracked ground, eyes scanning every corner. There were no bodies, just armor fragments, some human, some alien. He crouched beside a broken helmet. The name etched on it was almost erased by heat, but not completely. He could still read the letters, RIAN. Eli's breath caught. He touched the helmet gently, feeling the scorched surface beneath his fingers. Lyra knelt beside him. "He was here," she whispered. Eli nodded. "Yeah, but maybe." He pulled out his scanner and activated it. The device beeped weakly, searching for life signs. Nothing. Then, just as he was about to give up, the screen flickered. A faint signal deep underground. His heart jumped. "There's something below us." They followed the signal to a cracked service hatch half buried in debris. Eli pried it open with his mechanical arm, sparks flying. A cold gust of air rushed out from the darkness below. The passage led into an underground maintenance tunnel, narrow, wet, and full of echoes. The scanner beeped faster with every step. "Stay behind me," Eli whispered. As they moved deeper, they heard a faint mechanical hum. The light from Eli's helmet reflected off metal, not debris, but a working machine, a stasis pod inside it, barely visible through the cracked glass, was a familiar figure, Ryan. His eyes were closed, his body connected to alien medical tech still flickering weakly. The green light on the pod blinked in a slow rhythm. Lyra gasped. "He's alive." Eli's throat tightened. He moved closer, brushing the dust from the glass. "You stubborn bastard. You actually made it." He worked quickly, reconnecting the power from his own battery pack to the pod. The machine hummed louder. The heart monitor began to rise, then Rain's fingers twitched. His eyes opened, faint, glowing with confusion. When they focused on Eli, his cracked lips moved. "You came back," he whispered. Eli smiled, his eyes burning. "Told you I wouldn't leave anyone behind." In that silent, shattered world, among ruins and ghosts, a single heartbeat broke the stillness. Proof that life could still rise from fire. The wind howled softly through the ruined tunnels, carrying the smell of dust and burnt metal. The stasis pod's faint glow was the only light in the darkness. Eli crouched beside it, breathing hard, watching as Ryan's eyes slowly opened. They glimmered faint green, reflecting the faint sparks from Eli's suit lamp. Ryan looked fragile. His armor was torn apart, skin pale, and breathing uneven. But he was alive. Somehow, against every law of nature and war, he had survived. Eli smiled through tears he didn't expect. "You're one tough son of a—" He stopped himself, chuckling softly. "You don't die easy, do you?" Rain tried to speak, his voice cracked and dry. "I remember the fire. The bridge. Thought I was gone." "You almost were," Eli said, adjusting the pod's power connection. "I followed the signal." "Lyra found you." The small alien girl peeked from behind Eli's shoulder, eyes wide with wonder. When Rain saw her, a weak smile crossed his face. "Little one." "You live," Lyra nodded quickly. "Because of you. And him." She pointed at Eli. Rain's eyes softened as he turned toward the human. "You came back for me," Eli shrugged. "You helped me first. Guess I owed you one." Rain's hand trembled as he reached toward Eli's new mechanical arm. The faint whir of the servos filled the air as Eli helped him sit up. "You lost much," Rain murmured. "Yeah," Eli said quietly. "But I gained more than I lost." By sunrise, they had climbed out of the tunnels. The sky was still gray and bruised, but for the first time in months, no bombs fell. The silence felt different now, lighter, alive. Eli, Rain, and Lyra stood at the edge of the ruins. The bridge remains glowing faintly beneath the rising sun. The wind carried the faint hum of approaching ships. "They're coming," Rain said softly. Eli looked up. A pair of dropships, one human, one alien, flew side by side, their lights blinking in rhythm. "That's new," Eli said with a grin. Minutes later, they landed nearby. Human medics stepped out first, followed cautiously by alien healers. For a brief, tense moment, both groups just stared at each other. Centuries of hatred standing in silence. Then Eli took a deep breath and stepped forward, helping Rayan walk toward them. The sight, a wounded human carrying a wounded alien, froze everyone in place. "This man saved my life," Eli said loudly, his voice echoing across the rubble. "And I saved his. The war took enough. It doesn't need to take what's left of our souls." No one spoke for a few seconds. Then one of the alien medics walked forward and bowed slightly to Eli. "Your courage changed everything. Our leaders saw what you did. They speak now, not fight." Eli smiled faintly. "Then maybe there's still hope for all of us." Weeks passed, the ruins of the old city were cleared, and a new base was built on the same ground, half human, half alien, both working together for the first time in recorded history. They called it Bridgepoint. Rain recovered slowly, though he could never fight again. Instead, he joined the rebuilding teams, teaching alien engineers how to work with human tech. Lyra stayed close to Eli, following him everywhere, learning to speak better human words every day. One morning, Eli stood before a crowd of both species, his new uniform crisp, his mechanical arm gleaming. A joint memorial ceremony was being held, to honor the fallen of both sides. He looked over the faces before him, humans in gray suits, aliens in silver armor. All tired, all changed. When it was his turn to speak, Eli stepped to the podium. "I'm not a soldier," he began. "I was just an engineer, a man who built bridges, not destroyed them. But war turned everything we built into ashes, until one day I carried a child through fire, and something in me refused to let go." He looked at Lyra, sitting in the front row, her small hands folded on her lap. "Maybe that's what being human means," he continued. "Not power, not victory, just refusing to let go of what's right, even when the world burns around you." The crowd was silent. Then slowly one alien bowed his head, then another. Then a human soldier lowered his weapon and did the same. The air filled with quiet unity. Rand, standing at the back with a cane, smiled faintly. "You always had too much hope, human." Eli smiled back. "Someone has to." Later that night, Eli sat by the riverbank near the rebuilt bridge. The stars shimmered on the water's surface like scattered silver coins. Lyra sat beside him, humming a soft tune from her homeworld. Rain joined them, lowering himself carefully to the ground. "You know," Rain said, gazing at the sky. "In my world, we tell stories about warriors who carry the light through darkness." "You are one now, Eli Grant," Eli chuckled. "I'm no warrior." "You are," Rain said firmly. "You fought the hardest battle, against hate." Eli looked out across the water. The new bridge stood tall and bright, connecting the two cities that once tried to destroy each other. At its base, a plaque gleamed under the moonlight. It read, "The Bridge Unit, born from fire, built by hope." He smiled quietly. "Maybe this is what we were meant to build all along." Lyra leaned against his side, whispering, "Home." Eli placed his mechanical arm around her shoulders and looked up at the stars one last time. "If one act can stop a war," he said softly, "maybe one heart can start a new world." The wind carried his words across the river, across the ruins, across the scars, into a galaxy finally beginning to heal.